Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and welcome to It's Okay to Be Old, all things about aging well. Now, hearing health is critical to your long term wellness and increasing your lifespan as you age. And one of the many considerations is that hearing aids and implantable devices that would make the lives of millions of people healthier and happier don't always get to those in need because of the cost and the limited insurance and Medicare coverage. Joining me today is Brent Lucas. He is the CEO of Envoy Medical, a hearing health company focused on fully implanted hearing systems. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, we're here to simplify some of very complex topics, which are twofold. First of all, as we both know, hearing loss can have devastating consequences for the patient and those around them, family members, work colleagues, and of course, in later years, caregivers. Together we need to encourage everyone to get screened for their hearing and to seek treatment if necessary right away. So, Brent, tell us about the different types of hearing loss that most adults experience, mainly over 50.
Yeah, so the when you think about hearing loss, it's really a very broad spectrum of hearing loss. And the numbers I usually like to use are US based numbers because they're a little easier, a little
Mhm.
bit more data collected on that. But in the United States, you can think about 40 million people have a level of hearing loss that is noticeable, if you will. And that could be everything from mild hearing loss, where you're just missing a couple of words here and there, or a consonant, or you can't hear your grandchild. Maybe you have a granddaughter with a very high voice, and you start to miss just a little bit of what she's saying to you. That's a mild hearing loss. And then we go all the way to profound. But there's about 40 million people in the bucket. And then in that bucket, it's really broken up into different levels and different types. So I'll start with the different types. So there's something called conductive hearing loss, which means that there is something in the way of the physical connection between your ear to your brain, essentially, is kind of how I would like to think about it. So a very easy way of giving yourself conductive loss temporarily is to stick your finger in your ear, and that doesn't allow the sound to come through. But there are a percentage of people in the country or in the world who are missing a bone or don't have an eardrum or something is missing that is not connecting the outside of their ear to the brain. That's conductive hearing loss. And that is a very small percentage of the population. You could think of it being maybe 10% of hearing loss is in that bucket. Then you have sensory neural hearing loss. Sensory neural, some people call it nerve deafness, but I don't really love that term. But sensory neural is the most common form of hearing loss. And that is you have a cochlea, which is a snail-shaped organ on the inside of your hearing anatomy. So we all know about our ear, we
Mhm.
know about our ear canal and our eardrum. Then we have three tiny bones behind our eardrum that connect our eardrum to what's called the cochlea. The cochlea is the ending essentially of your hearing nerve. So the sensory neural hearing loss is when that organ starts to have these little tiny hair cells inside of it and they actually start to die off or be damaged. That's called sensory neural hearing loss. And that is by far the most common. About 85% of us have sensory neural hearing loss. The third type is what's called mixed hearing loss, which you can imagine is a mixture of both. So a little bit of conductive and a little bit of sensory neural, and that's let's call it 5% of the population. So the majority of us have sensory neural hearing loss. That's the type that we have. And then you have levels. So you have mild hearing loss, which is what we talked about earlier, all the way to profound. Profound would be hearing loss of a level where you can't hear a lawnmower right next to you. You might feel
Oh,
the vibrations, but you can't actually hear the lawnmower. So you could think about mild hearing loss almost being 20/20 vision, and you could think about profound hearing loss being complete blindness, if you will.
and is it inevitable for most people as they age to have hearing loss?
I wouldn't say it's inevitable, but the longer that we're living, the more likely it is that more people are going to experience hearing loss. So now that people are living longer, we are seeing more and more people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s start to report a level of hearing loss that is impacting their lives. Um, so there is age-related hearing loss. That could be genetic, where you're just sort of progressing through life, and because of your particular gene set, you're going to experience some hearing loss. And, you could look back at your family to say, well, grandpa had hearing loss in his 70s or 80s, so I'm probably going to have it in mine. There's also noise-related hearing loss, which is, you went to too many rock concerts, or maybe you're a hunter and you shot your gun without hearing protection, or you were in the military. And if you're in the military, a large portion, in fact, the most common disability in the military is hearing loss and tinnitus. And then there's other types of ways you can get hearing loss, such as ototoxicity. And by that, I mean your ear is actually can be damaged by certain drugs, and pain pills are one thing that can actually harm your hearing loss. Certain cancer medications are also known to do it. And then I would say COVID, I'll just point to other things that we're learning about, like COVID. COVID actually impacted a significant amount of people and gave them hearing loss.
Really?
So, yeah, so it comes from all different sets. And I will say we're now a public company, and as a public company CEO, I'm going around trying to educate investors and the public on hearing loss. And one of the things that's sort of a misnomer in this world is that all hearing loss is it's all the same. And there really are different levels and types.
I appreciate that very comprehensive description. And which brings us now to what's the difference between hearing aids that are external and implants that are placed inside the inner ear?
So we are a hearing implant company. Envoy Medical makes hearing implants only. We do not make hearing aids, but I can talk about it because I've been around them for so
Yeah.
long.
Mhm.
Essentially, what a hearing aid does is it's all external, so everything's external, and it picks up the sound using microphones. It makes that sound louder before it hits your eardrum. So it's essentially just taking the sound that's in the environment, making it, they do some processing and they'll do some filtering, and then it makes it louder before it gets to your eardrum. So now your eardrum is a tympanic membrane, right? So it vibrates when it gets hit by the sound. So all it's really doing is making it vibrate more or louder. Implants, which we make two types. We make a middle ear implant, which is an implant that interacts with those three tiny bones in between your eardrum and your cochlea. That actually picks up the vibration off of those bones and then directly stimulates the cochlea by vibrating your last bone to bring the signal. So it's more of a way of sort of interrupting the physical chain of the ossicles to do better, essentially. And then there's cochlear implants. Cochlear implants are for people who could no longer benefit from a hearing aid. And so at a certain point, hearing loss gets so significant that a hearing aid can't make the noise any louder anymore. You need something different. And in that regard, you need electrical stimulation of that cochlea. And that's what cochlear implants do. And we are making the world's first fully implanted cochlear implant. It's in FDA trials, hopefully gets approved in a couple of years. And that is a fully implanted device. It uses your ear and has some very interesting aspects. And then we don't have one of these either, but there's also something called bone conduction devices, and those are for those 10% of people who have conductive hearing loss. There's a special set of implants for them as well.
So, on the bigger picture does this treat people who have developed hearing loss over the years as well as people who were born with hearing deficiencies?
Yes, so the therapies that you can get, at least right now, the therapies that you can get are agnostic to whether you were born with it or you experienced it later in life. It's really addressing the symptom, not the cause. Eventually, maybe there's gene therapy and other things, therapeutics. They're working on those, but I will say they seem pretty far away right now for your average run-of-the-mill hearing loss. There are some very specific genes that they're working on, but for 99% of us, we're still going to need a hearing aid, a middle ear implant, or a cochlear implant.
Now, this is just kind of a technical question. If someone's older and they're experiencing some profound hearing loss, do we skip all those steps and go right to the implant, or do we go through that process of trying a hearing aid, then maybe a middle middle ear implant, and then the cochlear implant? Is this something that it's progressive, like, many treatments. I need more drugs, or I need more treatment, or I need more intervention. Is it progressive, the intervention as well as the hearing loss, is what I'm asking.
It's a great question, and I would say if you've been paying attention to your hearing loss, where you've been getting, you've been getting tested, or you've been able to see that progression. Hopefully, you've had an intervention early on to get some hearing aids, or
Okay.
and right now with over-the-counter hearing aids, you can actually do it at home in the beginning. If you're just experiencing a little bit, go get yourself an over-the-counter hearing aid, try it out for a little bit. And then if you want to, and you start to progress, or you decide, you know what, I want to get a little bit more of a professional approach to this, then go see your audiologist and they'll prescribe you a hearing aid. And hopefully, honestly, hopefully the hearing aid is enough for you
Yeah.
throughout your life.
Mhm.
But for some of us, there is a steady progression once it starts, and you will end up in this category. And there's about 4 million people in the United States right now who need a cochlear implant. But to get back to your first question, or the part of it, if you are deaf, or profoundly deaf, as we say, you will need a cochlear implant right away. But
Mhm.
I would say that the your audiologist is the one to make that call for you, to just say, look, you're at such a strong level of hearing loss that a hearing aid's really not going to do anything for you. So why would I sell you? Hopefully they say this. Why would I sell you an $8,000 hearing aid that's not going to do anything for you when you can go get a cochlear implant that will?
Question might sound a little out of left field, but it just occurred to me. So, if someone was born with hearing deficiencies, and some people are, there's hearing loss runs in my family, so it's a subject that's near and dear to me. And I luckily got the other side of the family. I have incredible hearing; I could hear for miles, which is
Good.
always not. I wear sound reducing earplugs when I go to concerts, even sometimes at
Okay.
the gym, because just the clanging of the weights and everything is so much noise. Um, so if someone's born or develops hearing loss at a very young age, is it psychologically or neurologically jarring to put this in them? Like all of a sudden now they can hear well. How do you manage that process, or that journey for the person who didn't hear well in the first place, and now all of a sudden they can hear? There's got to be a learning curve or a physical adjustment to that as well.
So I think if we're talking about hearing aids and the mild, moderate level, it's not so jarring. It's very
Okay.
similar to those of us who use headphones. You might pick up a little bit more noise, or it might sound artificial, right? Because it's coming
Okay.
through an art, but it's not as jarring.
Okay.
If you go to a cochlear implant, however, cochlear implants are different. So they are an electrical stimulation of your nerve. That's really what we're doing. So it sounds like, I say it sounds like, Donald Duck, maybe with a sort of a metallic sound to it.
Okay.
That's kind of how, so you do have a learning curve with cochlear implants.
Okay.
And for some people, there is a psychological component to it. And actually, in the very beginning of cochlear implants, when these first came out in the 80s, in the 90s, they had a psychologist was actually part of the team, so that we made sure that everybody was okay in understanding the process. Nowadays, the learning curve, we understand it very well. Audiologists are able to counsel, set expectations, so when it gets turned on, it's going to sound different. But if you do what your audiologist says, there's a very clear progression to when you're about 10 months out from surgery, you start to plateau, or it's gonna sound normal. Just like if you went to Spain and you were amongst a bunch of Spanish speaking people, it would sound funny, but then after a year of being there, it would be your native language, right?
Right.
Or not your
Right.
native, but it would be a very comfortable language for you to understand. It's very similar to that. But you have to go into these implants with clear eyes and understanding what are my real expectations here. And one of the important things for people with hearing loss to understand, no matter if it's mild or profound, there is no cure right now. So we are helping a damaged ear. We are overcoming your symptoms and addressing your hearing loss, but we are not reversing your hearing loss. And so you have a damaged ear, and we're doing our best to help you live a normal life. But you need to have some expectations that it's not going to be perfect.
Brent, is the is the implants are the implants both types? Particularly, I'm curious about the cochlear implant. How is it activated? Is it a self activated item? Is it another part of the body or a switch? I'm talking about the tech of it now, of how it actually works, because God forbid there's something goes awry or it's faulty. How is that addressed?
So cochlear implants we call it activated. They are activated after the surgery. So for our device and our trial, just kind of go specifically about that since I know that best. For our trial, you get implanted and then you wait a month. And the reason we wait a month is because we need the ear to heal before we turn the device on.
Okay.
And we turn the device on remotely. So our device is fully implanted. So you don't have anything on the side of your head at all with our device. Everything's implanted, and we have a battery pack that's in the chest for our acclaim. And so what your audiologist will do when you show up for your appointment is they will essentially sync the implant with their programming software. So we hold the device over that syncs that up, and then they will be able to remotely turn the device on, and they will start at a very low setting and gradually turn you up until a point where they call it most comfortable loudness. So that they want to get you to a point where it sounds a little loud because you want to push yourself a little bit.
Okay.
Just like when you're working out, you want to push your ability and let your brain really start to learn. And so that's how they turn it on. And then you can turn it up and down. We give you a remote. You can turn it up and down. You can change between settings. So it's really, you really have a lot of flexibility with it. And then I would, to the point of, hopefully nothing goes wrong. Cochlear implants are very robust technologies that have been around for quite some time. They are class 3 implanted devices. We go through such an amazing amount of testing that the FDA requires. So these devices have been put through the paces, like pacemakers, like sleep apnea devices, like deep brain stimulation devices. Anything that's in your body gets really put through the ringer. And so cochlear implants are no different. We've really tested these as much as we can.
This is fascinating, technology. And I'd imagine if you need a cochlear implant, the hearing loss is significant or severe. Does nothing to improve it. It just helps you where you are today. And does it prevent further loss? Does it replicate the function of what the ear is supposed to do to prevent it from getting worse?
The short answer is no. So
Okay.
once you get hearing loss, it's progressing for most people, and it will actually get worse over time.
Okay.
Now, with these devices, and you said it doesn't improve it. When I know what you meant, we don't reverse the
Right,
hearing loss,
right.
but we do improve the hearing. And so with our devices and other implants, there's enough room to continue to turn it up. So that's why you'll need to continue to go into your audiologist, and we suggest once a year. You go in, they'll test your hearing with the device, and then we'll be able to turn it up more if we need to. And that's really the beauty of these devices is once you get them, you can have them for the remainder of your life. And our device, which is fully implanted, both of our devices are fully implanted. We believe that, patients want that choice to have a fully implanted device, just like they want the choice to have LASIK or contacts or other things. They don't want to have this big thing on the side of their head. And so these devices will be with our patients for life and really give them an opportunity to sort of live without being tied to their hearing loss.
Can you safely be active? Can you go swimming? Can you go skiing? Can you go live your life and without any repercussion?
Absolutely. With our devices, you have the flexibility not to have to worry about anything on the side of your
Okay.
head. So you can go swimming. You can go, and we have a couple of patients that talk about being able to go on a boat and jump into the lake. You don't
Yeah.
have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
I had a story of a patient, or it was a friend of friend of a cochlear implant patient, not our device, but a different device. And it was a grandfather, and he was tubing with his grandchildren. And on the tube, his external device was knocked off into the water, and then that means he's completely deaf at that point because he has nothing anymore to help. So he couldn't interact with his grandchildren until they got back to shore. With our device, there's nothing external at all. So you don't have to worry about that. And because your body's waterproof, our device is waterproof.
So the surgery is actually inserted through the ear canal and done that way?
So for all cochlear implants, they do an incision behind your ear, uh,
Okay.
and then they this if you feel behind your ear, sort of this bony part that's called
Uh-huh.
your mastoid. So this is your mastoid bone. They drill access to your middle ear space through that bone,
Oh, interesting.
and then they insert an electrode array into your cochlea. It's a And we have some animation on our website. If people are
Okay.
interested, they can go there. And once it's implanted into your cochlea, then they basically close you up, and the implant's ready to go.
That's very interesting. So excuse me, I'm sneezing, forgive
God
me.
bless you.
Um, now, here's the catch. These devices, hearing implants, are prosthetics, and therefore they're not subject to the hearing aid coverage exclusion, allowing for potential Medicare coverage. Now, Medicare beneficiaries deserve access to these innovative and breakthrough hearing devices. You and I agree on that. So, Brent, you and your company have been working tirelessly to get these devices covered so that more people have access to healthy hearing. Tell us about the efforts to move this forward.
So cochlear implants right now are covered. So I'm going to set those aside because
Okay.
we CMS has already agreed that cochlear implants are prosthetics, and same with those bone conduction devices. They've agreed those are prosthetics. What they don't agree are prosthetics are the middle ear implants, which is a complete shame because middle ear implants could help a variety of people between hearing aids are no longer enough and I need a cochlear implant. Right now, there is this gap between people that need a hearing aid and people that need a cochlear implant. So on one hand, you have hearing aids, which are, not require no surgery, not a big deal. And then on the other hand, you have this sort of sledgehammer approach of a cochlear implant. Yes, they work, but they completely change your type of hearing. They're much more invasive. Middle ear implants belong in this middle category. And so what Envoy Medical has been doing, and we've been working with people, a bipartisan effort both in the House and the Senate, is to introduce a bill that's called the Hearing Device Coverage Clarification Act that basically says, look, CMS, you got this wrong. These are not hearing aids. These are hearing prosthetics, and they should be covered. And so we're working tirelessly on that because, frankly, it's just completely unfair for these people that are in this middle area where they could have a device that returns them, to being able to interact with society. They should be able to have that option. And, frankly, I think hearing aids should probably be covered as well. But, we're not a hearing aid company. I'm not part of that argument. But for sure, these middle ear implants that really can bridge the gap for a lot of people, and they're less expensive than cochlear implants. They do not electrically stimulate the cochlea, so you don't have to go through that relearning process. So it makes absolute sense that these devices should be covered, and we're pushing for that, and hopefully people will listen, and eventually CMS will change their mind.
I'm so with you, and let's collectively really try to spread the word and get out, like you say, all these levels of hearing loss and assistance absolutely should be covered, even partially covered. Just address the fact that this is a very profound problem on many, many levels, and everybody needs to know about this. That's why I'm so happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks,
You are
Beth.
doing such great work, and I wish you the best on all your future endeavors with this. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we go?
There's one other topic that I'd touch on just
Okay.
briefly for your show is people should also know that if you don't address your hearing loss, there is a growing body of evidence that connects that to early cognitive decline and dementia. And so some people think, oh, I'll just deal with it. I won't address my hearing loss because, I'd rather do other things with my money. Well, I just would tell you that there's a growing body of evidence that says if you don't address your hearing loss, you're more likely to experience early cognitive decline. And there's a gentleman, don't listen to me. I'm a CEO of a manufacturer, so don't listen to me.
Okay.
There's a gentleman named Frank Lynn from Johns Hopkins who publishes widely on this is a respected voice. So if you're interested in that connection or that correlation, Look up Dr. Frank Lin from Johns Hopkins, and it'll take you on this journey of a variety of other people who are also looking into it. But I think it's an important thing for people to keep in mind. You definitely want to address your hearing loss if you have it.
And that touches upon what I talk about a lot in my talking about aging and community is that, and you know all too well, you're a young man in my book, but you reach a certain age where you really have to establish a community. And when you have hearing loss or vision loss, or you're compromised physically on any way, you tend not to socialize as often. And that's a twofold problem. You're not socializing, and you may not even realize the level of hearing loss you have because you're not around people to say to you, hey, did you hear me? Or you don't seem to understand what it is I'm saying, which has nothing to do with the level of understanding, like you alluded to earlier, that they can't hear or they miss a few words in and out. And it's very, very important if somebody says to you, I suspect you have some hearing loss, to really listen to that. And like you say, be proactive about getting in there. I think it's both physical and emotional and psychological, all of the above, how hearing loss affects our psyche and our cognitive decline. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Very, very important topic. So Brent, thank you. And for more information about hearing health and devices, your company website?
It's called Envoy Medical, and Envoy is spelled Envoy medical.com. And we have information on our devices, but we also have general information on there as well about other things. And people that are in the LinkedIn world can follow me on LinkedIn. I tend to talk about things there. But yes, please reach out. We have Amy Padula is one of our people that works for us at Envoy Medical. She actually has two of our devices, so she's, can talk to people directly about it. But yes, envoymedical.com.
Okay, great. And I always ask my guests in closing, what do you like about getting older, Brent?
Oh, what do I like about getting old? I think the wisdom that comes with it is probably my favorite part. I do wish I had some more of that wisdom when I was younger, but being able to look at life and sort of understand why things are the way they are is calming in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Good for you. And thank you so much again. I want to really, really tell you how much I appreciate having you joining us here. And I want to thank all of you who are listening to It's Okay to Be Old. I'm Patricia Greenberg, and please subscribe to this channel for more information on aging well. Stay well and stay safe. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.